Treveyon Henderson is back, so find me a better backfield than what Ohio State has now. These are Snap Judgments. They're brought to you by Buyers Auto. That is Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. What an offseason for Ohio State with all of these moves now. That feels like the end. I don't know who else could possibly have an announcement to make now that Treveyon Henderson has confirmed he's coming back to the Buckeyes. So let's start with him. Then we'll get to Quinshon Judkins and that combination. But Bill, this is, you might have heard this before, a big deal for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think it would be funny if guys who just second year guys who don't have NFL decisions to make just started announcing they were back too, just to hop on the bandwagon and keep the good vibes rolling. We kind of heard that when the Quinshon Judkins things happened that it wasn't like an either or scenario. So, this isn't necessarily surprising that Treveyon's coming back, but I think at least for us, but I think it might be for a lot of Ohio State fans who probably just assumed that Ohio State got the best running back in the transfer portal because it was losing its best running back. And now clearly that is not the case. You said find a better backfield in college football. Don't know that one exists. This is a guy with Treveyon Henderson who when he's been healthy, I think has shown us that his ceiling is that of a player who's up there, with anybody in the country in terms of his ability to impact games meaningfully from the running back position. And I actually had forgotten or didn't realize, I guess, that he was on the cusp of 1,000 rushing yards this year, even having missed a third of the season after the Notre Dame game. So it was almost like a quietly, really productive season for him. And now he gets to come back into a backfield where he's not going to be asked to carry the ball 250 times during the season. He's going to get, I think, the rest that a guy who's got a little bit of a checkered injury past needs and should be a better running back because of that. So I'm assuming they'll get to bottle up whatever the best of Treveyon was this year and have that extrapolated over the course of the entire season because of the new dynamic in Ohio State's backfield. So yes, it's huge. Obviously all these returns are huge for Ohio State, but Treveyon for me might have the best chance of maybe being even something better than he has been because of the new world he's living in with a equally dynamic guy in the backfield alongside him.
After the Minnesota game, that was another one of those huge games for Treveyon that he had in the last month of the season. The conversation, it was pretty simple. I had with him. I said, if you do this for a full season, if you did this for 8-9 games, you're a Heisman Trophy finalist if you had this type of season. I had super high expectations for Treveyon coming into the 2023 season. He lived up to them, other than the fact that he missed 4 games. And I don't think that we've even begun to scratch the surface of what his impact in the Ohio State offense can be, especially when you add a player like Will Howard in the backfield and Judkins around him. That changes the dynamic of the entire run game and takes the focus off of him a little bit. I think what he's proven to be in the passing game, he has become an extremely physical runner, running through contact. Sometimes I wish he would stop doing that and try to just go around it because you're fast enough to outrun most people. But it seems like it's been a personal thing for him to try to prove how tough he was at times. And I think that the really remarkable thing about what Treveyon has done as far as just changing over the last year, if you guys remember when we watched him in the spring, he was not participating because of injury, because of the foot. And he just looked like a very pissed off, angry kid. And whatever happened to him personally in the last 6 months has completely changed that. And the perspective that he has on football and on life and everything, I think that plays a big role in this decision because he's realized that there's more to this than just go to the NFL and make some money. He wanted to be a part of what this was offense was going to be. And the relationship he has with Tony Alford is special. And that matters a lot to Treveyon Henderson growing up in a relatively tough area of Virginia. This is a kid that has had a lot of moving parts in his decision, but ultimately it comes down to finishing out what he and his 2021 classmate, teammates have decided is the most important thing. And that's leaving and saying, we won something that mattered. And now you are put in a better position than he's ever been put in at Ohio State with the additions of Judkins and everything else that's going on with the defense returning and everyone. And it's pretty exciting.
I think we know what was pissing him off, at last spring. And then for the few months before that, Berm, I mean, it was the injury. And then the way the injury was leading to a lot of suggestions that Treveyon was not fulfilling his potential. You know, he's like was shutting down social media and turning off replies because he was taking so much criticism, and that includes from us. Like, we're not removed from that. We could put it in better context because we knew that the injuries were part of it, but there was a lot of conversation that whether that's uh, people on the outside evaluating, whether that was the media evaluating, or even when it came to Tony Alford and Ryan Day, like saying, "Hey, what's going on with reading some of these plays?" Like, that sophomore year was a frustration point for Treveyon Henderson virtually every way, and he had not had a chance and couldn't get on the practice field in the spring to remove some of that. And it was impacting the way talent evaluators in the NFL were looking at him, like everything. And I can't imagine being in his shoes and having to deal with all of that, knowing like not just at the moment that you couldn't do for Ohio State and your teammates what you wanted to do, but that you weren't doing for yourself what you thought you could do, or for your future with as an NFL player, which dating back to when we went and met him in Virginia, he was already thinking about a second NFL contract. So all of that is a massive, massive challenge. And even throughout the junior year, he had another setback with the injury. We know that. It really wasn't until November where it was like, oh my goodness, well, that's the version that everybody expected. That's why the expectations were so high. Like, he just hasn't had a lot of those moments yet. It's like, take a deep breath and show what you can do. Like, I hope that this opportunity for him and this decision allows him that freedom and that confidence in all his senior year, because this hasn't worked out the way he wanted for 3 years. And that's with really good numbers that most running backs in the country would kill for, a really good opportunity, a lot of wins. Like, there's still more for him. And I do applaud Treveyon Henderson for continuing to work through all of that. Most of the time when we speak with him, he's still got a very good mindset and mentality and smile on his face about it. You want nothing but the best. So if this is the way he accomplishes that, I mean, I hope he does.
Yeah, I think he will. It's funny, like all the frustrations that he's had that you just laid out. He still has an opportunity this coming season with just like a normal year, I think, to finish his career top 10 in program history in rushing yards. Like when he's had the opportunities and's been healthy, he's really, I think, made the most of them. Like he won them the Wisconsin game this year. That was a defensive goal line stand, and Treveyon being Treveyon is the reason that Ohio State won that game up in Madison. And from that point on, it was like, yeah, this is the guy that we expected him to be. And I even thought, now it was different circumstances and different injuries. He handled like the post Notre Dame absence, I think, pretty well, it seemed, and then channeled that into a good place once he came back. Now, last year, the 2022 season, like I don't know, he was just never right. Like he was trying to get back and play, but even when he was playing, he was never himself. Like I guess like actually being removed from the injury when you come back, that does create a different dynamic. But there was probably something learned, I think, having gone through what he had to go through in 2022 to help himself come out on the other side of another injury in 2023 in the best possible form, and to be a guy who helped Ohio State moving forward. So there's probably some freedom in that too. At least I would hope there would be. And there's no reason to think that he can't channel that even further moving into next year. Now that he knows what he's capable of, one, what he can do in this offense, two, and three, now that he doesn't have to do it alone. Like that, I think that's a huge burden lifted off his shoulders.
Go back to 2021, his freshman year, and look at the statistics that he put up in that season in an offense that was like almost exclusively pass happy all the time. Consider that in 2022, it's actually pretty difficult for a running back to play good football with a broken bone in his foot, and then take out 4 weeks with a broken rib in this season, and then look at his statistics when he came back. The kid has been 100% what people thought he would be when he was healthy, and it's been a bit of a slog to get there and stay healthy. But like the way that he's handled things, the way that he's bounced back is awesome. And I think that he's going to go down as one of those kids that people are going to always remember as being like one of the quiet leaders of Ohio State football. And as far as running backs go, pure talent wise, in the time I've covered Ohio State, I mean, the conversation between him and J.K. Dobbins is pretty interesting. I think Zeke is the only one I'd have like clear cut ahead of him on the talent meter. J.K. at his best was pretty darn explosive, and Treveyon is in the same conversation for sure. So, like, to think about what you're going to get out of a healthy version of him when you add in another hammer like Quinshon Judkins next, like that is a really, really exciting opportunity for the Ohio State offense.
Berm, think back. I referenced that trip that we took to Virginia right before COVID struck. I mean, that feels like a long time ago. I mean, in reality, you're looking at Treveyon Henderson's career, and there's one more year to go. It'll be over before we know it. Not to put a damper on it, but I just think about that conversation. It feels like a decade ago in my mind, but like the memory of him talking specifically about sharing the workload in college, not having to be the primary back. I mean, that was such a mature response, even from somebody who was going into his like high school senior year.
Yeah. I mean, he's always been a really thoughtful kid and a young person that understands the bigger picture. Again, he's dealt with a lot of things off the field that have kept football from, I think, at times taking over too much of a priority in his life, because he could understand the perspective of a person that had seen actual loss in his life, and getting hurt on a football field isn't something that really stacks up compared to what he's gone through growing up. And now you look at it from a business perspective, like he's always been ahead of the game in that respect. I mean, we've talked to him about stocks and real estate for the last 2 years. Thankfully, nobody really did this year. That was not really a conversation.
Some did.
Well, most didn't. And, you know, he was coming into Ohio State at a time where he didn't play football his senior year in high school, where it was probably the most dynamic running back I've ever seen on a high school football tape his junior year. And then you have all that going on, and the decision to say, you know what, I don't need to be the superstar. I don't need to have 30 carries a game. Like that is rare. And I think that it's something that has been lost in the shuffle about Treveyon as a person as he's gone through and made this decision.
So, Bill, when you project this forward, we've talked about the ability for these two guys with Judkins and Henderson to share carries. You draw it up. How's that going to look?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've every opportunity I get to speak into existence Ohio State playing two running backs at the same time, I will take that opportunity. So I hope with two guys like this that Ohio State might explore that. Like they're like, they are similar, I think, in just sort of the like being dynamic, but I think they do it in different enough ways that you can use them together to complement each other at the same time if you wanted to. But I think for both of them, it's more about just like managing workloads, especially Quinshon Judkins. Like to have almost 600 carries the last 2 years is insane. Credit to that guy for like playing and then carrying the ball that much as a young college football player. I don't know that a lot of guys would make it through that the way that he has, but he clearly doesn't want to do that, nor would I if I were him. Going into your draft eligible year, like you want to try to cut down on that a little bit and maybe maintain a level of efficiency that I think at times has been difficult for Quinshon Judkins to maintain, only because he gets the ball so much. Like his average yards per carry don't actually blow you away. Like the missed tackles do, and yards after contact are really good. But I think all that stuff could be improved for him in a world where he doesn't have to carry the ball 250 times. And I think obviously the same thing is true for Treveyon. So I think it's going to look like a 50-50 split with both guys. Maybe there's a game where one has the hot hand over the other and you give that guy more, but I don't think it's going to feel anything like the 2020 season when they brought Trey Sermon in. And then for half of that year, we were trying to figure out like who their best running back is and who should be leading the pack. I think both of these guys, are good enough to do that, like have a body of work that they deserve that. And clearly now that they've made these decisions, are very interested in the idea of that kind of dynamic, or else I don't think either one of them, or not, but both of them wouldn't be here. So I'm not worried about any kind of like ego massaging in this situation either. I think it's going to be great for both of them, both in the immediate for at Ohio State next year, and then long term when you think about their pro careers and taking a little bit of wear and tear off their bodies.
We've watched Bama, we've watched Georgia, we've watched other teams around the country in the last couple of years, Texas this year. Like it's not just Treveyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins either. Dallin Hayden, you can play all three of those running backs and expect very good things out of all of them. Dallin Hayden, every time he's been on the field, has proved that he belongs on the field. So I don't think he should be completely dismissed from the conversation. And I think what it does really sets up Ohio State in forecasting the offense for the future. Even though you lose the Biletnikoff, a winner and the best offensive player in the country, and Marvin Harrison, I don't know that I can think of an Ohio State offense in recent times that has been more suited to do whatever they want offensively than this upcoming version of the Ohio State offense is going to be. You have at wide receiver and at running back, and now with a quarterback that provides a true dual threat element and like more options than we've seen out of Ohio State in a long time offensively. And I think that is going to be extremely enticing for whoever the new offensive coordinator is in Columbus. And it sets up what should be a really interesting spring and summer to figure out where they go, because this team, skill position wise, is as good and as versatile as any in the country in the last 15 years.
And I think about to the Egg Bowl and watching Quinshon Judkins and that, and I was like, this guy just looks tired. I mean, he was worn down at the end of the year, and it wasn't just because I had him going over in that game and like, when is this going to happen? Fortunately, Lane Kiffin just kept giving him enough carries that was still going to happen no matter what. But if you're for Judkins, and that's a small sample size that I'm watching there, but you know, that Treveyon Henderson with some of the injury risk, you run into from there the age-old question. Yeah, it'd be better to keep them both fresh and put this amount of carries on both of them. Bill talked about the hot hand. Running backs always want to get into the flow of a game. They always say that they'll get better, they'll get stronger as it goes along. But I mean, how true is that really? If by the end of the year you've got 300 carries under your belt, like you have to have some ability to recognize that. And I do think that Berm's point is well taken. Like Dallin Hayden has to be part of that too. Could be James Peoples as well, or Sam Williams Dixon. Who knows? If you're going to get through not just 12 games, but potentially 15 or 16. We've seen Ohio State even in these 12 game seasons having to stretch through a depth chart of 5 running backs to get through it, with injuries picking up for Mine Williams or a week or two there for Chip Trainum. Like it is hard, and that position is a grind. So the more talent you have, like we said all the time, that's the better problem to have. Figure out how you want to use it, deploy it, but there's no downside whatsoever to having Treveyon Henderson back and figuring out a way to split carries with Quinshon Judkins.
No, and it's incredibly helpful to have the players themselves understand. Like we can say that, and that's one thing. But you know, Treveyon now at Ohio State was his freshman year, like split time a little bit. Obviously, split time in 2022 when he was injured. When he came back fully healthy at the end of this year, he was like kind of the guy. But he understands what that is. I think he's always welcomed that opportunity. I think he welcomed it from the moment he was recruited, when he came in with a 2-man running back class. And I don't know Quinshon Judkins well enough to say whether or not he's always felt this way, or whether or not there's been a change in perspective for him as well. But I think clearly he views it the same way. So if the players are on that page, I think you get the most out of them when you put them in a situation like that. And you're right, Bro. Like, don't dismiss Dallin Hayden in the conversation. Like, he's a guy that can help them as a ball carrier. And like, you know, you can hand the ball off to Dallin a couple times. You can throw the ball to Treveyon too. Like, I would argue they haven't really embraced that enough in this offense. And now maybe having another really dynamic back in Quinshon Judkins and another reliable one, certainly in Dallin Hayden, would allow you to be a little more open to using Treveyon as a receiver than you would have if he was the guy that you knew you were handing the ball off to 20 times a game.
For sure.
All right. Great way to sum it up here on Snap Judgments, brought to you by Buyers Auto. It's Trey Day. He's the latest one coming back. The Buckeyes have got a full bushel of stars. What a remarkable offseason. Treveyon capping it off with his announced return to the Buckeyes. For Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham, I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.